I'm going to piggyback off the first topic. We kicked off strong talking about open-mindedness. And the next thing to that, there's this beautiful natural order of things, and a piece that fits right in is the subject of this next address. And I'm going to be talking to you guys about perception. But not just perception, I'll also be talking about communication as well. Because just like open-mindedness is this tool for you to be able to put in your tool belt to utilize in your life, as well as here, so is perception and so is communication. So what is perception? Well, if you look at it, you'll find that it's very, very similar to opinions. Everybody has got an opinion. You've heard that said. Everybody has got a perception. Perceptions are something that come from just like our ability to understand that we need to be open-minded to people. We do that because we realize that everybody comes from a different place. And that different place is what gives us our perceptions. It gives us our beliefs, and our beliefs form our perspectives of things, our perceptions, the way we see things. So it's important for us to recognize that we have differences in perspective. This acknowledgement, this step into consciousness of the differences in our perspectives is something that enables us to more effectively engage our environments. It enables us to more effectively communicate with people. And I'll give you an example. Who wants to be the subject? Bronson, thank you. All right, let's say that you are a new car fanatic, all right? You like new cars. And you know I like my old cars, all right? Bronson's perspective is that new cars are the best you can have for automobile transportation. My perspective, let's say, is that old cars are the best you can have. So you see right off the bat that we have two different perspectives. Our perspectives differ. Does that mean we can't get along? Yeah, I'll probably shun him. We'll probably never talk to each other again from here on out, knowing this. No, but reality is, the acknowledgement is where it starts. It starts with an acknowledgement that it's okay for us to have different perspectives and that we do have different perspectives. Because this is what opens the door for not just communication, not just a practice of open-mindedness, but also a practice of entrance to opportunity. It enables opportunity to be able to come into our lives. I was once told that if you wanted to make money, all you had to do was find one of the many flowing streams of financial wealth, that's being transferred everywhere because there's lots of money in the world, and figure out how to take one of those streams and bring a little path towards yourself and let it channel in. And the same thing goes for perspective. All we have to do is acknowledge our differences in perspective and just make room for our ability to communicate. And in doing this, we make room for an ability for opportunity to come in. We open the door for that opportunity. We make a little cut in the riverbed, so to speak, and let opportunity flow our way through changing our understanding of perspective. So we change our understanding of perspective by recognizing that people have perspectives, different perspectives. And so, like I mentioned, Bronson's perspective is new cars are better, mine is not. There's a lot of different approaches we can take to this. I might not know Bronson at all, and he might come up to me and tell me new cars are better. This is an opportunity in and of itself to practice a lot of different things like self-control, emotional control, verbal control, a whole lot of things. But there's so many ways you can go about this. Just because he has a different perspective doesn't mean we can't have a good conversation. It's something I call remaining in the neutral. He can talk about new cars, I can talk about old cars. Nobody has to benefit from the other. We can just hear each other. We can listen to each other, right? So being able to understand that he has a different perspective And being okay with that allows me to be okay with whatever he has to say about that perspective. Because how do I know he's not going to come off strong? Maybe he will. Maybe he's going to try to convert me to his love and passion of newer cars. If I understand he has a different perspective, I can listen to him without having him convince me otherwise. But even better than that, I can listen to him without letting it affect me. Marcus Aurelius talks about, we'll get a little more into depth with this later too, how anything exterior of your mind cannot penetrate your mind if you choose not to let it. And so, believe it or not, you're in control of many more situations than you realize, and we'll talk about that later too. But if I approach a conversation with a gentleman, and in this case it's Bronson, and he's telling me about how new cars are better and how maybe I'm a moron for liking old cars, I don't have to let that affect me. We can do so many things with that. We can make that a neutral conversation where I learn new things, whether or not I commit that to memory or not. I can just listen to what he has to share. I can make that an educational conversation where he actually shares his knowledge, his wealth of knowledge in this area with me, and I learn something. Or maybe he's going to sit there and rant. And I can practice self-control by listening to him, letting him speak, while preventing him from affecting my emotions or my state of mind or state of being. So you can quickly see how understanding that people have different perspectives enables us to do many things, which I shared a number of those things. And one of the best things we can do is it enables us to better communicate with people. Again, it opens the door for our ability to control that conversation and have good communication. At a minimum, it can be neutral. At a minimum, we can simply have a mature dialogue where we're not getting in an argument. But it can be more than that too. Maybe, once I recognize his perspective differs from mine, maybe I want that conversation to go somewhere. Maybe I want to learn something. Or maybe I want to change the subject. Right? If I can understand that perspective differs, then I can guide myself into a mature dialogue where I can change the subject and talk about something else without getting angry or without letting his passion of a certain subject that you're talking about affect me. So that's one of the beautiful things about perspective is we all have different perspectives. And it's going to be in a large variety of things much more important than cars. I would say you're probably not going to run into many conversations where you argue about cars, but I've gotten into more than I would than I could count. But the thing is, there's more important talks. There's more important topics to discuss that are much easier to argue about that we run into on a daily basis. There's much bigger beliefs, much larger systems of belief within ourselves that are much easier to get in heated debates about. You see it all the time in politics, right? People are always talking about left and right, conservative and liberal. They're always talking about the existence of God or the non-existence of God, right? There's much bigger systems of belief. And this is where perspective really is important to understand. When we understand this difference of perspective and that it's okay to have a difference in perspective, that's when we really open the door for so many things. Not just opportunity, not just practice of open-mindedness. It allows us to practice maturity. It allows us to step into conversations with maturity, with self-discipline, with open-mindedness, with all these fruitful virtues. So, again, we have deep beliefs based on where we grew up in. I've met some people with incredibly hard lives, and that might be relatable to you. Maybe you grew up in incredibly unfortunate circumstances. Maybe you grew up in a family that was always there, but you felt that it was abusive, right? Everybody has a different story, and everybody's different story ingrains in them and teaches them a different belief. And these beliefs, they come into They come into reality. We come to see them when we encounter different people and engage with them. And that becomes dangerous territory. I've met people who are incredibly positive despite some of the most unfortunate circumstances. And I've met people who are incredibly resentful because of unfortunate circumstances. And where I'm going with that is I haven't always agreed with their opinion. Personally, I'm inclined to be like, look, your past was unfortunate, but it's in the past. What could you have taken from that? What could you have grown from that? But many people are still stuck in that place, and that's fine. That's where they're at in their developmental journey and their journey of life. But when you are able to understand that they have this different perspective of their situation, whether it's right or wrong, we're able to engage in a conversation. I'm able to approach that person and say, well, that's in the past. Don't you think it would behoove you to move on from it? And maybe they're not ready. Maybe they'll say, well, no, this was really bad what happened to me. And that's okay. Because then I can say, well, why don't you tell me about it? Rather than saying, well, you're wrong. You should change your belief. You should be more positive. You should forget about that, right? Rather than us wanting to push our own thoughts and beliefs on other people, we're able to say, all right, well, how can we engage in a dialogue in a mature way, right? Well, share your story. Is there anything I can do to help, right? That's this understanding of perspective allows us to completely flip our approach to things. In some cases, it allows us to express greater charity or to give ourselves in a greater way. What this understanding of perspective does is it makes it easier for us to take ourselves and put us in their shoes. And that's also one of the tools that I would offer for this, is if you aren't already drawn to do that, you can take that tool out of your belt and make that how you see the difference in perspective, right? If you don't understand that our story is different, and that doesn't move you to compassion of some sort or to empathize, I should say, with them, and to put yourself in their shoes to better understand their perspective, well, you can do the exact opposite. We're fortunate enough where we can say, what if I put myself in your shoes and pretend I love new cars? And then we're able to see the difference in perspective, right? We're able to interchange those pieces to benefit us. And then, once I put myself in Bronson's shoes, for example, and I now understand his perspective, now I'm able to say, well, now that I come from a place of understanding this conversation isn't worth arguing about, or this conversation isn't worth, ending our friendship or our conversation about. I can then take that perspective from putting myself in his shoes and say, why not approach this in a mature sense? There's no reason not to. There's no reason to argue. Let him share what he wants to share. It's important to him. Now that I've put myself in his shoes, I can see that this is significant to him. Why? I don't know. Maybe I haven't the faintest, but that doesn't matter. If you know why, all the better, but if you don't, no big deal. No big deal. So you can see it works both ways. You can deliberately put yourself in their shoes to see their different perspective, or you can recognize they have a different perspective, which enables you to better step into their shoes, which further enables, right? The ball keeps rolling, further enables communication, which is unavoidable. We communicate all the time. We like to think that if someone asks us what is communication, let me ask, what's the first thing that comes to mind when I ask you what communication means to you? Verbal, right? But communication is much greater than verbal. There's so many different ways to communicate. And you know this. What you think of... I asked this question to two gentlemen who we encountered while we were practicing for this. And I said, how do you usually communicate with your friends? And they said, we usually text them. And I said, okay, what are some of the pitfalls of texting people? And they said, well, I can't see them, and I can't hear the tone of their voice. Those are forms of communication. I can read you based on your tone, based on your body language, based on the direction you're facing. If I'm not looking at you, you guys don't even think I'm talking to you. So the beautiful thing about communication is it's vast, it's diverse, there's so much about it. It's got so much potential. It's got so much to offer. The wild thing about communication is in our limited human form, we typically only think of it in one way, and that's verbal. And it's so much more than verbal. There's so many different forms of communication. Silence is a great form of communication. You know, you've heard it said, silence, no answer is an answer.
Silence is golden.
Silence is golden. Yep, that's another good one, right? So we can see that there's a lot more to communication than we think. It comes in a lot more forms than simply through the use of words. You know, where my eyes are, what my body language is, what my posture is, how I breathe, all these things tell you things, right? You communicate with me by sitting here through your own body language. I can read your interest level during a speech. But what I want to do is I want to introduce something else about communication. I'm discussing communication because there's an even bigger point that I believe would be more beneficial to you than any other point in communication that I've yet stated. Do you guys like secrets?
No, not really.
Okay, cool. No? Yeah, maybe a little bit? Sort of. Well, I got a secret for you. Yeah.
What?
Say again?
What did you just say to me? What? You just asked the question.
Do you like secrets?
Like secrets.
Do you like secrets? Do you like learning secrets, I should say? Do you like learning?
Yeah, in general, people want to be in the know.
That's true. Very good point. Let's say hypothetically the secret was good. Do you like learning good secrets?
Yeah.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I worded that wrong to begin with, and right off the bat, it sounded dark and dishonest, and that wasn't the intent. I meant, do you like learning life-changing secrets?
Yes.
There we go. All right, there's the reaction I was hoping for. Well, guess what? I've got one for you. I've got a little piece of information that might come as immense use to you, that you may never have heard before, and I'll bet you haven't. So we talked about the differences in communication techniques and how there's different ways to communicate. And one of the biggest ways to communicate that I haven't yet mentioned, which leads up to this secret that you all want to know, is that there are communication styles, and two of them are this: direct and indirect. Now, we've already been speaking about this without even talking about it, because all of the ways of communicating that we've mentioned fall under these two communication styles. But it's important to understand these two things, and I'll tell you why in a sec. But first, let me break it down. What's direct communication? Direct communication is me coming up to Vu and saying, I'm hungry. There's not much room for questions or curiosity. Like, he understands that if there was a problem and a solution, the problem is I'm hungry and the solution is to feed me. Okay? Indirect communication is the opposite of that. If direct communication is pretty much the shortest path from point A to point B, indirect communication is the long way around, all right? It's me being hungry and instead saying, I'm angry at you. He has no clue why I'm angry at him. He doesn't know it relates to hunger. He has no clue at all. Maybe he does. Depends how well he knows me. But the understanding of indirect communication and direct communication is important because, here's your secret, because these are the tools men and women primarily use. Men, we primarily communicate with each other and other people directly. And women primarily communicate in an indirect way. Now, I say primarily, I'm talking like 90 to 95% of the time. Sometimes men are indirect, sometimes they're deliberately indirect, sometimes women are direct, sometimes they're deliberately direct. But typically, on a daily use, in the habitual way that we speak, this is how we typically communicate. Right? If I'm going down the street with my buddy, I got Vu riding shotgun, and I'm cruising down in my old car, or my new car, because Bronson convinced me to buy a new car. So now I'm driving the latest, the 2023 Lambo that I just saw in Norwich, Connecticut yesterday, or 2 days ago, Thursday. Here I am going down the road, and Vu says I'm hungry. That's going to be the way he typically communicates, because he's a guy. And I'm going to say, I'm going to engage in a conversation, go, how long can you wait? Where do you want to go to eat? Etc. Right? Our normal, mature conversation as friends. So, to some degree, we don't have a choice but to communicate with women, or we wouldn't have much of a relationship, or we wouldn't be able to seek a relationship. And whether it's our girlfriend or not, or our mothers or our sisters, we're going to encounter women, so this is important to know. But let's say you're going down the road in your new Lambo, and you got your girlfriend with you, and she says, I'm angry at you, because this is how women communicate indirectly. And you say, what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong now? And she's like, oh, you didn't take the laundry out this morning. And you're like, what does that have to do with anything? We left the house 3 hours ago, and I took it out last week, and I did the garbage like you asked, right? You're like, what is she talking about? And then you look at her, because you've been to Leverage on Life men's retreat. And you say, what's really wrong? Is there something on your mind? And she says, oh, I'm angry at you. You didn't take the laundry out. And you go, no, seriously. What's wrong? She goes, you didn't take the laundry out, and I didn't get breakfast because you didn't take the laundry out, and I had to do it, and so we left out the door late, and now I'm hungry. So you're hungry. Yes, I'm hungry. Where would you want to eat? And that's when the mature conversation begins. But you see, and you've probably seen this in past relationships or current relationships, a lot of times that's how it plays out. It's a lot more indirect. You have to really dig for that material. And again, the food's an example. Sometimes it's a lot deeper. Usually it's a bigger problem that'll present itself in such a way, like if Daniel is annoyed at me because I'm late, he's going to pick up the phone, he's going to say, I'm annoyed at you because you're late. With women, it doesn't usually work that way. She's just going to tell you she's angry, or she's going to tell you to do the laundry in a mean voice. You're going to be like, why am I, the laundry's not my job. Well, today it is because I'm too busy. And you'll be like, what's going on? So these problems and this communication style typically presents itself, depending on the sex, in bigger problems. But this is usually the way the sexes communicate. And it's important to know this because we are always engaging people. We are always encountering people. We are running into people everywhere. Even when we don't want to go out in public, we're still communicating with our family. And most of our families, they are constructed of, can you hit that window, Dan? They are constructed of men and women, right? So it's unavoidable that we're going to run into women in circumstances, and we're going to run into men in circumstances. And so when we understand that there's a difference in the way people communicate, just like when we understand that there's a difference in the way we perceive things, we're able to enter into that engagement with the right tool. We're able to use the right tool when we enter into that engagement. No matter who I'm talking to, I can understand that there's a difference in perspective. Probably, most likely, usually, because no two people are exactly the same in every possible way. And then you could take that even further. When you enter into an engagement with a guy, you can use the tool of understanding he's most likely going to be communicating with you directly. Or when you enter into the into an engagement or communication with a lady, you can understand, because of this tool that you've put on your belt, you can now recognize that you may have to engage in this conversation differently because women are more prone to being indirect about communication. How many of you in the last month have flirted with a girl and made a move to pick her up? You know, she's beautiful, she's hot, she's lovely, and you would like her to be your girlfriend. All right? Yeah, right? There's no shame in that. But what we don't realize in those interactions is most of the time when we're speaking to that woman, she's not being direct. When she says you can have my number, but then she doesn't text you back, that's her indirectly telling you I'm not interested. Right? She's not verbally telling you I'm not interested, but when she doesn't text you back, just like we talked about no answer is an answer, you see that this is a problem you've probably run into. You've seen how women communicate differently, right? You've seen that when you ask for their number, she might say, well, I'm busy, I can't give it to you right now. That's her indirectly telling you I'm not interested in you. I'm not interested in giving you my number, right? That's indirect communication in action. So that's just an example. Now I got to get back on track. So again, that's relevant because we are engaging with both sexes all the time. And so just like it's important to understand there's a difference in perspective, depending on which sex we're engaging, it's important to know how to engage either sex. You know, it's important to be able to make that side note. I'm speaking to a woman, whether it's my mom, my sister, a friend, someone I don't know, a stranger, or a girl I'm flirting with, and know that she's probably going to be using indirect communication. Because then we're able to, or vice versa for men, I'll just finish this topic. And the same goes for men. You know, if I'm talking to a man, I'm in the back of my mind going, all right, he's probably communicating directly. Like, I can still look out to be aware if he's going to make indirect comments that I should pick up on, hints and such. But I'm able to understand I need to engage this dialogue differently because I'm speaking to a man. And so in the process of switching back to the other topic, I lost what I was going to go with the other one, but that's all right. We can then make better judgment calls. That's where I was going to go, right? If I'm speaking to a woman, I can pick up her indirect communications because I'm aware that she speaks indirectly usually. Well, then I'm able to look for those indirect communications. So when she tells me, I'm busy, I'll have to give you my number later, I'm able to say she's communicating indirectly, she's clearly not interested. Stop wasting your time. You know, go look for another woman. There's more fish in the sea, right? And so when you understand these differences, you're able to use your time more efficiently because time is of the essence. We're only given one life, right? Right now, I'm only in this moment, and I don't know where I'll be tomorrow. I don't even know if I'll be alive. So why do I want to waste today? I've got a lot of beautiful, wonderful things to do. And so the last thing I want to do is waste time on someone who's not interested, which is all right. And, you know, we're not here to be friends with everybody. I don't have time to be friends with everybody in the world. If you do, then, hey, give me some of your time. I'll buy it off you. But at any rate, we can understand that when it comes to this, it's important to be able to have tools like this that we can keep in the back of our minds to understand that there's differences in belief, and this perspective, this understanding of perspective and the difference in perspective among people helps us to better engage people. Just like when it comes to communication, to understand that the different ways people communicate enables us to better communicate with them, you know, especially if they're people we care about. Why would we want to waste time or to ineffectively communicate with people we love? We wouldn't, you know? We want the time we spend with our family to be well spent with our family. So when we understand how to better communicate with people, how to better engage people, we're able to make the best of everybody's time for everybody. We're able to do good for ourselves and to do good for others. And so that's why this understanding is so important. That's why this little secret I shared is hopefully something you've never heard before, and you could take out of here and say, geez, I can really apply this to my life. This is going to come in handy. If not, well, hey, you know, I'll just remind you. But at any rate, we're gonna go back real quick on the subject of communication, before I finish this up, it's important to communicate efficiently. You know, when asked what's the most important strength to have, I've heard many people, probably like the top, one of the top 2 or 3 answers, people always say communication. I wish people communicated better. I wish I communicated better, right? So we understand it's important to communicate well. And so being able to understand that people have different perspectives, that just like people have different opinions, they have different perspectives, and that it's okay to have different perspectives, it opens the door for better communication. It allows us to open our minds up to a much smoother style of communication, a much easier way of communicating with people, because that's just how it works. When we accept that there's differences in perspectives, we're able to approach conversations much more effectively. So I encourage you to break out your notebook and jot that down, right? Keep that in mind. Don't forget to add that tool to your belt, right? Understanding that people have different perspectives and that people have different ways of communicating, and it's not going to be the same as yours, and that those communication styles frequently are related to those differing perspectives. So with that, I conclude.